All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this day's episode. Whether you are listening in on my podcast, The Best Damn Camp, or tuning in here on YouTube, well, if you're on YouTube, you definitely know what is happening right now because you can see what is currently happening with the fact that I am not alone because someone is also willing to speak with me again. I know I'm just as shocked as everyone else. But if you are listening in on the podcast, don't worry, you're going to find out soon enough because I have a very special guest from the Rick Riordan Presents imprint. I'm thrilled that she is here. I am a little bit awestruck, but before I get into fangirling mode, allow me to introduce the fabulous Gracie Kim. Gracie, thank you so much for coming to speak with me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Fran. Thank you for having me.
No worries at all. I am still kind of in shock that you agreed to speak with me. I'm very excited about The Last Fallen Star and just to talk with you all about it and your writing process. Um, your Instagram is like one of the lights to my day. The posts that you do are
Oh,
absolutely, they're so sweet, and I'm just excited and thrilled to see that so many people are already excited about The Last Fallen Star. Hopefully as excited as I am because I am very, very, very excited. But speaking of The Last Fallen Star, could you tell everyone who you are, what you've written, and just a little fun fact about yourself?
sure. So, hi everybody. My name is Gracie Kim. I am the author of The Last Fallen Star, which comes out, in like a month now. Oh my gosh, with Rick Riordan Presents, as Fran mentioned. Um, a little random fact or interesting fact about me. What can I say? Mm, when I was 16 years old, I may or may not have ran away with a circus. It was only for a few weeks. It wasn't long, but the story goes that I went for my 16th birthday. My best friend took me, and I fell in love with one of the performers. He was this Colombian, like salsa tightrope walker guy, and I just thought he was the most incredible human I had ever met until that moment in my life, and I totally fell in love with him. And then we ran away for a while. It's a random fact for you.
Oh my gosh. That okay, that is that wow. In my head I'm just like, can someone make a film about this? Because that's like the coolest. Like I would pay money to watch that movie. Just,
I mean, it's
oh,
a bit cliche, isn't it? You know,
it's
like
still
running
cool.
away with the circus. But thank
Oh my gosh.
you.
What I just because I'm intrigued now, what did you do in the circus? Did you like take on an act or anything like that? Or you just kind of there to observe?
No. Yeah, I mean, I was basically a groupie, but I did some ushering, like ushering people to their
Yeah,
seats and
yeah.
stuff, but it's probably about, yeah, that was about it.
Oh, okay. I'm still impressed all the same. That's wow. That's very, very cool. Okay, I think you win the award for the coolest fun fact.
Yes.
Um, but in terms of like things going on in your past life, you are incredibly impressive. I've read up about you, not in a stalker way. I felt I need to point out I haven't like I probably shouldn't have mentioned the word stalker because now there are going to be questions. Um, so you've mentioned in the past that you were a diplomat, which oh my god, just in general, I'm kind of like that's very very impressive. I don't that wow. I don't have words for it because just the word diplomat, I'm just kind of like that's that's amazing. That's insane, but also incredible. But you were also a cooking show host, a plushie maker, and now you're a debut novelist. And I'm just like, that's you have done a lot in your life. And I sit in my room a lot and I question whether or not I should be getting out more just from the amazing things that you've done in your life so far. Um, as well as the fact that your debut novel has already been optioned by Disney, which is incredible. But from all these things that you've done in your thus far really exciting and eventful life, going into novel writing, kind of what led to you making that switch to become a novelist from all these things that you've done in your past?
Well, first of all, Fran, thank you for making me sound like an amazing superstar. That is not what I am, but it sounds cool when you say it. So yeah, I mean, I've had a bit of a patchwork of a career so far. So my main job up until writing has been in government, right? So I've been in diplomacy for yeah, a bit over a decade. But I guess while I was working in government, I've always had a bit of an itch, and I think looking back, it was always just this desire to fulfill a part of me that my day job just didn't fill. It was so fulfilling in so many ways. It got, allowed me to travel all over the world, and I got to live in all these different places I would never have been able to live. But I think there was always something missing, and I wonder if it was always because if you look at the random things I've done, they're always like creativity related. So I think there was, I didn't know it at the time consciously, but I think looking back, I just always, wanted something a bit more that made my heart sing, I guess, that feeling where you wake up in the morning and you think, man, I'm tired, but I'm so excited to get up because of all these things I want to do. So I think that's why I've done all these random things. But in terms of writing, so I was finishing up my last posting when I was working at the New Zealand Embassy in Beijing, and I was getting ready to come back home. And I suspect it was probably a bit of a quarter life crisis of sorts, where I thought, okay, so I've tried all these different things, and some of them were okay, some of them failed, but I've stayed at this one job. Is this it? Like, am I settling in to this life? Or is there something else big that I need to try, that I need to just get off my chest? And I asked myself, what do I love? And I kept coming back to books, and I know you're a book lover, so I know you get it too. Like that love of worlds that you can discover through the pages of a book. I mean, you can't buy that stuff. That stuff changes people. It teaches empathy, and it does such magical things. And I kept going back to books. And then it was at that moment I had this weird epiphany or realization that all the books that I'd loved as a child never represented me. I loved them, I treasured them, but they were not my stories. And it was actually a really sad realization, because I thought they were. And when I realized that I was invisible, I wasn't even the bad guy on the page, I was just invisible, I didn't exist. That's when I knew what I had to do. Like, I had to write, and I had to write my stories, my culture, my people, just my experiences. I just wanted to share that, and part of it was probably catharsis of my own, but also just from sheer excitement to want to share these things with other people. So I think that's how I made that jump. Although I do want to add that quite often when you hear stories like this, it almost comes across like people just woke up one day and then they had this lightning bolt and it just changed their life. And I have to say, it wasn't like that. It was definitely gradual. But that is how I got there in the end, I think.
Well, I'm definitely thankful that you got to that point, because from the parts that I have read of The Last Fallen Star, I am absolutely in love with your writing style, the story that you are coming across with, the relationships involved with the story. It's very much a family orientated story with an incredible magic system as well. Just the magic literally in the story is phenomenal. As someone who I'm really bad at fantasy based stories. I'm one of those people, like, I know what I want to do, but when I try to do it, doesn't go so well. But like the magic and the witches in your story, and sort of the magic system within it as well, is just fascinating to read and to see. And just in terms of that, like, what was sort of the most challenging feat when it came to creating this sort of magic system within this world? And how do you kind of keep track of the rules and know how it's going to work for these characters and this world itself?
To be honest, I think the hardest part is keeping track. 'Cause, I guess when I was brainstorming, so when I brainstorm, I have this A3, right? Two A4s is A3, isn't it? Yeah. So like an A3 sketch pad where I just use lots of different colored pens and crayons and things and just shoot out ideas. And I would come up with all these cool things and I would want to use all of them. And and then I'd start writing and realize through critique partners and beta readers that they had no idea what was going on. Like this couldn't work. Well, how does A work when B works? Because then C negates B, and then that makes A not possible. So I realized at that point that complicated is not always a good thing. So in my head, complicated means a really rich system. And what I, through trial and error, realized was that actually what is really compelling is when there's like one or two main kind of laws of your magic system, things that are unbreakable and are true. And if you build a world around those two core facets or one core facet, and everything else has to be believable and relatable, I think that is more powerful. So yeah, lots of trial and error and friends and critique partners telling me that things just don't work or that I'm being too greedy. And in terms of how I keep track, to be honest, I don't. And case in point, somebody recently was wanting to do an interview, and they asked me a few questions about how this works and how that works, and I was really stumped. I was like, oh, that's a really good question, and I'll have to come back to you because I'm not sure. So
let me just check my notes.
Really hard. Exactly. Luckily, the advanced reader copies don't have this, but the proper copies that are going to come out, the hardcovers, actually has an end paper included in the front, and it has kind of the realms. So it has the realms included with the Maguhani, who is the god of all creation, and then the different clans of gifted witches, as well as their ancestor patron goddesses and things like that. So there's kind of this chart at the beginning of the book that hopefully will give people a bit more of an idea going into the book about what the world looks like in a nutshell. But I have to say, yeah, I don't keep track very well.
Admittedly, what writer usually does, I think that's the thing, unless it's insanely complex to the point that if you don't keep track, it's gonna go very, very wrong. I think that's kind of like the writer's mentality, is like, as long as I understand it, I'm good.
Right. Until readers start to poke holes and you're like, oh, the whole basis of my world does not work.
Then the panic sets in, and then you're just like, okay, time for denial. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Exactly.
But in terms of Fallen Star, and just your mentioning of The Gifted as well, so this is set to be a trilogy. It is set to be a trilogy. I just want to double check. I've written it. I was like, wait, yes. It is set to be a trilogy, isn't it? Yeah. So in regards to that, do you already have a plan for how this series as a whole is kind of going to tie up together? Is everything kind of bullet pointed out sort of things? And in regards to that as a whole, from the terms that I've learned from doing NaNoWriMo, would you say you're more of a pantser or a plotter when it comes to kind of planning a series and individual books?
Yeah, I'm definitely a plotter. I think pantsers are incredible human beings, and I don't know how they do it. I genuinely don't. And I would love to have a bit of their magic, because I think there's so much magic that happens when you're writing freely, like your subconscious coming out, and like I can just only imagine how amazing that must feel. But no, I need a plan. I'm definitely an outliner. It always changes. I find once I start writing, things just go all over the place. But if I don't have that initial plan to start off with, I just can't even start. I just sit there with the blinking cursor just haunting me. Yeah, that horrible, horrible feeling. So yeah, no, I'm definitely a plotter. And in terms of the trilogy, so the second book I've already started drafting, and we're in the drafting and revision process. So I definitely know what's happening there. But to be honest, before that, when I had the first book done and looking at the next two books, I really only had the larger arcs in mind. Like I knew where I wanted each story to start and end. But that was it. I had no idea what was really going to happen in the middle. So yeah, in terms of the last book, I don't know. I have no idea right now. But yes, hopefully once I get there, I'll have a much clearer outline that I can work with, because I need one.
Oh, I definitely hear you about the outline, and I agree. Anyone who is a pantser, I have so much respect for, because they're both
Right.
like crazy to me, but also just like the pinnacle of creativity at the same time. If you can bosh out an entire story with no idea of how it's going to work on all these sort of things, just like I bow down. Like that's incredible.
Agreed. Yeah,
No,
you know, the other thing I thought was really helpful when I was thinking about how the trilogy would work, that I think might also be useful for other people who are planning series, is that even if you don't know what is happening plot-wise in each story, what I was trying to get a feeling of was what the story lesson was for each story. So for my main character in book one, what did I want her to learn by the end of the book? Like, what is the thing that she discovers about herself? What is the core of the story about? And I knew very clearly what each of those three books were in that sense, you know, just like the one, you know, like the first book is about belonging. It's about her search for belonging. So I think that is also helpful when planning series, just knowing in a nutshell what the story lesson is.
okay, that is a good to know. So for anyone listening who is writing a series, very, very valuable lesson right there. I also realize I probably need to do the same for my series, because I don't think I have that, and that would definitely be useful for figuring out the main context theme for my characters. So I'm definitely going to do that from now on. I have learned things. I am already loving this interview so much. I have learned so much that I'm definitely going to be implementing. So thank you.
You know, sorry, just to preface, I don't think it's necessary like to have one. I mean, I think stories can be just as entertaining and valuable without different themes. But I think if the same character is in each of the series, you know, whether it's a duology or a trilogy, in my mind, it's more fulfilling and rewarding if each of the lessons that they learn in each of their adventures or journeys are different, you know, so you're kind of like building the layers, of growth.
Okay, that is no, I totally see that. I think that's definitely something that I find interesting about the series, is that the characters somewhat different in a sense in each book, because they're still kind of continuing to change and things like that. Like like I'm obviously like a Percy Jackson fan. I've got tattoos and everything. Oh god, every time I say that, I'm just like, does that make me sound like a little bit like a crazy fan? Probably. I don't care.
But Die-hard fan, yeah.
But that's something I find really interesting about the characters in those books, is like obviously they're aging throughout the series as well, but there's a different lesson in that they have to learn in each book, like a sense of patience, how to open up with friends and family, and all these sort of things. I feel like is integral to the story at the same time. So I completely agree with what you were saying there. And even things like Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, like the characters always learn something different in those seasons as well. And definitely adds something extra to the characters. So I'm definitely intrigued to see how that's going to work with your characters as well in the Gifted. It is called the Gifted series. I was just said that and I was like, wait, is that actually what it's called? Now I feel bad if that's wrong.
The Gifted Clans.
Oh, the Gifted Clans. Okay. I was
Yeah.
close. Just missed a word. Oh no. Fran, these are things that you should know as an interviewer.
Oh no. On that, also the story lesson thing, I actually think that story lesson, that learning that the main character does, is the whole point of the story. You know, I think the plot, the external things that happen are just obstacles we put in the character's way so that they can get to the lesson. So to me, if there's no theme, right, like the thing that they're trying to learn, then the plot, you know, it's just like a sequence of mildly interesting things.
I completely agree. It's like that whole thing is like, does the plot change the character, or does the character change the plot sort of mentality as well? And depending on how those are executed, it's whether or not you can enjoy the story or enjoy the character more. So yeah, it's a really interesting concept, just to how these different things can work for a story and what draws you into it, and what those sort of things, like who's going to be your favorite character at it based on how they interact with the story and what they change with and who they change into from the events. It's a really interesting thing, and just hearing how you work with that in your own work and the plan that you've got that for this trilogy, it's really, really fascinating. And just kind of in regard to that, and slightly to what you mentioned earlier as well about this sort of commitment and this need to write characters and stories that you can see yourself in. So I know you've mentioned that you are committed basically to writing Korean X characters onto page, and that's like an important factor for you for your writing. It kind of, in regards to that, like, how do you sort of handle any feelings of pressure, I guess would be the best way to describe it, about making sure the representation is quote unquote right and feels right to you at the same time as well?
Yeah, that is a constant concern of mine.
Mm,
Because as soon as you put a label on something, right? Like as soon as I say this is a Korean diaspora story, then every Korean diaspora person is going to want to see themselves in it, or at least expect to see a part of their experience in the story or the character. And so I always have this thought in the back of my head that I'm not doing it justice for all those people. But the reality is I can't tell everyone's story, right? I can only tell one at a time, and all of them is colored by my own experiences.
mm,
So I try to remember that culture is not a monolith. So there's Koreans, and then there's Korean diasporas, and then there's Korean Americans in the book, and then there's me, Korean Kiwi, and also distinct. And even within those groups, such variety of experiences.
mm,
So I guess I just try to do the character justice, and within the context that I've put them in.
mm,
That's all I can do, I think, reminding myself that everyone's experience is different, and that everyone who picks up this book will bring their own experiences and their own baggage to it. So for example, I'm starting to get reviews in, and it's really fascinating to see how some people will love a certain part of the book and another person will find that exact same part really bad, and
mm,
vice versa. So everybody brings their own experience and their own lens, I guess, to it. And I can't control that. And I don't think it's my responsibility to. So I guess, yeah, I try to keep true to the character that I've created, and what makes sense for them and their world, and accept that all the characters and stories I write will be told through the lens of my lived experience. And that if people can see themselves in that, that's awesome. My heart feels full at the thought of that. And if they can't, then I hope that I could read books that shed light on those other experiences too.
mm,
But you're right, it's definitely a cause for pressure to
mm,
try to represent, to try to put our previously underrepresented identity on the page. But I really do hope that if people read my book and think, actually, that wasn't my experience at all, and keeping in mind, this is fantastical, right? It's not
mm,
contemporary, but so a lot of it is metaphorical. But if people do feel strongly, that I hope they could start writing too,
mm.
that could be almost an impetus for them to start sharing their stories. Yeah.
No, I totally hear you, and I hope that does work as well. Just like, I think that's the thing, that when someone is able to open their voice to the experiences that they've had, that, like in my case, most of my work features the fact that I am a gay woman, so most of my characters represent that side of me, the struggle with my identity, the struggles of coming out and being comfortable with that, and kind of things like that. But like you say, the experiences of a community aren't a monolith. Everything is slightly different. There is someone who has one story, someone has one that's a completely other side of the spectrum. And yeah, I definitely agree that hopefully with people being able to speak out, it inspires other people to have that opportunity to speak out for themselves. And I know that's something that has happened slowly over the years, where people from different backgrounds and different experiences have slowly gotten more opportunities, whether it's been in traditional publishing or even in self-publishing. There are so many incredible self-published authors from LGBT plus backgrounds, from different minority backgrounds, who have this opportunity to tell their stories in the best way that they know how, and has then inspired more people to kind of follow in that path. So kind of hearing you talk about that, like trying not to think too much of that pressure, because you hope in some form that you sharing this story will help other people be able to share theirs. Oh my god, English, Fran. um, I think is really inspiring for me to hear as well, to kind of see your perspective on this. And I know it's always been a concern of mine as well, like when I'm able to share this, share my own work with the world, will people like recognize what I'm trying to say as well? So hearing you say that, I'm like, okay, that is the best way, I think, to kind of approach it in some form. And it's a really beautiful way to think of it as well, of this way to inspire others with your own experiences to share theirs. So thank you for sharing that with me. I really do
All
appreciate
good.
it.
I think as long as the story is and the characters are authentic to us, I think that authenticity rings true to the reader. I do
Definitely.
believe that. Yeah. So I think if we're, as writers, if we're writing a story and we can tell that if there's that niggly feeling at the back of your head that something's not quite right here, people will probably feel that, you know? And yeah, even if our experiences are diverse and different, if it's true to us, I think that travels through as well.
No, I completely agree. And it's kind of great at the same time how all these things are different for other people and will lead to so many different kinds of stories, like all the things that are currently coming out at the moment. So obviously we have your story coming out. Everyone pre-order it now if you haven't already. um, and then we've got other authors that come out. So we've got Rebecca Kwong. I'm hoping I'm saying her last name right. Rebecca, if you're hearing it and I'm saying it wrong, I'm so sorry. So we've got her series at the moment, which is so interesting and different in its own fantasy world. We've got oh no, I've forgotten the name of the book. The Jade oh no, it's something Jade. I've got the
I'll
audio
look it
book.
up
I should
right
probably
now.
know it.
Yeah, Jade War.
That's it.
Fondalee's book, yeah?
Yes, Fond du Lis. That's it.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. But just having so many different stories that kind of are similar in the experiences that they're focusing on and the different cultures that they're inspired by, told in vastly different ways, is just amazing. And I hope more people branch out as well. Like, I know that's something that's been in discussion in recent months, of people diversifying their reading and their author as well, to kind of get more of experience of the literary world. And I know I've been guilty of it, where I stick with like comfort reads. I buy so many new books, and like I'm one of those people, I buy new books and I read my old ones that I've read many times and don't read the new ones. I'm one of those people. Yes, I'm ashamed of it, but I can't stop it. But I'm getting into that point now of like audiobooks are like my best friend at the moment, because I can travel
Oh,
around and
yes.
listen to it. And in doing that, I've been able to diversify my reading. So I've been reading Fond du Lis, I've been reading Rebecca Kwong, I've listened to Evan Winters, and so many other incredible authors that I would have been able to read sooner, but I just don't have the ability to read properly at the moment with books. But it's something so many people are doing, and so many people are recommending more authors that aren't in the general recommendations that people do. Like everyone always recommends Tolkien, and everyone always recommends Harry Potter or Percy Jackson as well. Like, it's always the ones that everyone knows the name of and consistently being recommended. But more people now are recommending authors that wouldn't normally have been recommended previously. And I think it's hopefully a good precedent of more people getting out there and sharing the names of authors that maybe people wouldn't have heard of previously, and help more people to actually realize there's more than the Western Hemisphere idea of fantasy and, you know, the very white face of the literary world at the moment. And it's just amazing to see how many more people are thankfully realizing that there's more than this Western idea of fiction. I went slightly off topic there and slightly ranty, but there was a
All
point.
good. I
somewhere.
totally agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Okay. Right, I'll go back onto topic for everyone listening and watching. I'm sorry, I do this a lot. Everyone who's on my YouTube channel and listens to my podcast, they know I never remember to stay on topic. I always go off on a tangent at some point. Did not intend to do so in this interview, but it's happened now, so I'll very quickly move on so everyone forgets that I did so. Oh,
it's all
gosh.
good, Fran.
Phew, okay, cool. But in terms of going back to your own book, so The Last Fallen Star is your debut novel being published, and it's an incredible thing that you are coming out with this debut novel that is already kind of getting so much hype from the different quotes that have come out at the moment from people that I've been speaking with. I'm friends with the host of the Seaweed Brain podcast, who I know you are doing an interview with as well. And
Yes.
me and Erica from the podcast are absolutely obsessed with your story at the moment and are very, very excited to talk about it. I know they're very excited to talk to you as well. But with this coming out soon, and kind of the importance as well within the story of family and like personal identity as well, what would you say is kind of like the main message you want people to take away from this story, or even the message that you yourself kind of feel is the most important, even if it's the one that people don't take away?
So I think in my mind and in my heart, there's two audiences for this book. So the first is for people like me who may not have seen themselves on the page, specifically Korean and Korean diaspora kids. I want them to be able to see themselves on the page having adventure and magic and be seen and heard, right? So that's my first goal. My second audience who I'd love to reach, and the message I'd like to give them, is to anyone who's felt like an outsider, or that they have been overlooked or invisible, or just felt like they didn't belong. My big message I'd really love people to take from Riley O in this book is that we all can be seen and we all can be heard, but it has to start with ourselves first, you know. And I think that's really hard. It's hard at any age, but especially when you're younger, you just want to be accepted and loved for who you are, and so much is riding on other people, right? You know, like your friends and the cool kids, or your parents or your siblings, or whoever it is, you're looking for external validation. And obviously that's important. I really do think it's important, because we live in a society, we don't live in a bubble of just us. So that is important, but we need to first learn to accept ourselves, you know, because if you don't love yourself, then no one else can. You know, if you can't model it, how can anyone else take the example? So that's obviously a big lofty goal through this one book about a girl who wants magic, but that is the goal. That's the dream, you know, and that's what I really hoped Riley could achieve in her story, and that others could see and take from her, is that we can all belong. Sometimes it's harder, but it has to start within ourselves. So I think that's the big message.
Definitely. And from what I've read, I'm not saying people will, but I definitely got that message, and I definitely see where you're coming from with that. Riley, I'm gonna say it now, she is my favorite. She is my favorite character in the story. And yeah, I think, at least for me personally, I did identify a lot with Riley, especially in terms of that, like, that feeling invisible and not kind of feeling like you belong. And with me, just from what we were mentioning earlier about everyone will be thinking of things in a different experience, that like Riley's identity issues in that sense, I kind of took that in the sense of how I had my own identity issues, but regarding to my sexuality, feeling like I didn't belong with my family because I was different. I wasn't falling into the quote unquote norm of what my family was showing to me. Now, I'm not saying I cried, but I'm also not saying I didn't cry when reading the story. It may just be because I'm very emotional as a person, but yeah, so
which is beautiful. I think that's such a wonderful thing to be.
Yeah, I did cry. I did 100% cry. But it's a lovely story, and again, anyone who's watching and listening, pre-order, or depending when this episode goes out, buy The Last Fallen Star, and then let me know in the comments later on if you cried, because I do not want to feel alone if I was the only one who cried. I don't know how I feel about it if I was the only one who cried. I may have to question a few things. Maybe I just need to speak to my therapist at some point. I don't know.
If it makes you feel better, there was one scene which for spoiler reasons, I will not divulge, but while I was drafting one part of the book, I also cried as I was writing.
Oh, and I feel bad that you did cry, because I've always felt bad when other people cry, but I also feel good that I wasn't the only one.
But tears are beautiful. They are, and I think people say the good, when you cry because something is so beautiful or something, or you're so happy, so you cry, therefore crying is not all bad. But I actually also think the bad tears, and the bad tears being sad tears or tears of anger, or I think those are also very beautiful, because we're human and we have emotions and we need to let them out, or else we would implode, right? And so tears are a really effective way of expressing ourselves. I may say that because I may cry on many an occasion for many a thing. But yeah, I'm not, ashamed of that. That's cool.
I hear you with that. I've got to say, a cathartic cry is probably the best kind of cry. Like, you've been feeling it brewing for a little while, and then you just let it out. Oh my God, best feeling.
Agreed.
It's not nice to cry, but also at the same time, when it's been brewing for a little while and then you do, it is lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, moving away from tears. Although I guess from the next question, it could be slightly tear related as well. So in kind of regards to the writing industry as a whole, it's noted a lot just in general how difficult it is to kind of break into the industry, and often it requires some like knowing who to like rub shoulders with, like who to speak with, and just kind of in general as well, writing a story that is considered like quote unquote out of the norm, or featuring characters that don't represent, frustratingly, what fiction presents more often than not, which is usually white, straight, male, occasionally the strong female character that usually comes out as well. What sort of advice would you offer to someone who is wanting to enter this industry, who may already be at a slight disadvantage considering what they want to write? And for you yourself, how did you break into the industry, if you're able to share that story?
I think my biggest thing is that the biggest piece of advice I would give is that people think of writers and there's this kind of romantic but incredibly wrong image of a writer going into a shack, right, in the mountains, deep in a forest, and then they just like type away and type away and type away, and then they come out and it's finished. The masterpiece is done, and then the next scene you see is of them like living in a penthouse in New York, and suddenly they're rolling in it and they're millionaires. I feel like there's so many things that are wrong with that image. And I think the first one is that writing is a solitary affair that you do once and it's done. So I think my first piece of advice would be to make sure, sorry, this is a little before the industry part, but to make
No
sure
worries.
that you surround yourselves with critique partners. Because I think the whole point about writing is that you have to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. And you can't do it alone. I really truly believe that you need to have other voices in your mind to help you hone your craft. And you need to be wrong. Like, you need to have been challenged and to find ways to find your voice. And I think that's ongoing. You know, I feel like that journey is possibly never finished. So the constant revision and being able to accept it, feedback and to be able to apply that is, I think, is the first thing. But then the industry part, I would say, is think about it like a business, is what I would say. You know, like, research the market as you would if you were starting a business selling perfumes or scented candles. I don't know, like, you have to know the market that you're selling to. And if you are selling, then you need to have a really good product, which is where that part before fits in, right? To make sure that the product is just not something that it's in beta phase. It's something that has been tested. You've done, in tech terms, A/B testing. You've got, you know, consumer feedback. You've got something that is not only something you're really proud of, and that is meaningful to you, but that makes sense in the market. And do your research. You know, I think even say 10 years ago, people like me who live in New Zealand would not have been able to access as effectively the publishing industry, which is still very much centered in New York. But now, because of the internet, you know, so many of the tools that that allow you to learn the industry are available to us, you know. And so I would really encourage people to do their research, understand what is selling, understand what agents and editors are looking for, and know that although it's slow and there's so much more growth to happen, there is so much more awareness and acceptance of stories that don't fit the traditional bill anymore. You know, there's more acceptance of that, and that is an opportunity. You know, it can sound opportunistic, but it is the truth. It is an industry. People still have bottom lines and profits. And if it's working in our favor, this is the golden time for us to share our stories, you know, and hopefully it just gets better and bigger, so that we can do more of that later. But this is the chance. And I think that's so exciting, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, so exciting. So yeah, I reckon do your research and think about your book as a product. Think about you yourself as a brand, and go in there informed. You know, don't just query your book to any agent and sign with the first one that comes along just because you're so grateful someone is willing to represent you. It's hard, yes, but and it's not guaranteed, yes, but I think it's just a mindset to think about it as a business, I guess.
All right, amazing. That is very, very useful. So for all my listeners and watchers who are writers who maybe are getting to that stage, listen to Gracie's advice. But just kind of in regard to that, and to kind of like finalize a little bit everything we've been speaking about, and to talk a little bit about the last fallen star for a sort of fun question. I know you asked your audience this for I think it was an ARC giveaway competition some time ago. Obviously in the series there are, oh god, I hope I get this number right, there are 6 gifted clans. Yes. Oh, maths is never my strong suit. For a second I was like, it's either 5 or 6. We'll go with 6 because that's a round number. From the 6 gifted clans, what clan would you say that you yourself are a part of, and why?
I would say I probably fall into 2 of them.
Ooh.
I would say I am part Kom clan. The Kom clan are the witches who heal. and their motto is service and sacrifice, and that is very much a big part of who I am as a person. I love to take care of the people in my life. It's something that I think defines my identity. So definitely be part that. But I also love to eat. And the Toki clan are infusers. So they can enchant any substance with magic, including potions and tonics, but also food, which is why a lot of the top restaurants you'll find in Los Angeles, where the book is set, are run by Toki witches. Obviously on the down low, because Saram, who are the non-magic, don't know that the gifted clans exist. So they just think they're really good restaurants. But and like I said, I just love food. I just think food is the best thing ever, just because it tastes good, but also because it is such a powerful tool for connecting people. So I would love to also be part Toki. So Toki and Kom.
All right, amazing. And just from what you said about the Toki clan, I can now see why you became a cooking show host. So that ties well together.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. And yeah, thank you so much for coming to speak with me. To kind of finish up, just let everyone know when the book comes out, where they can go pre-order or buy, depending when they may be listening to this, and a final thought maybe, or or a favorite quote, maybe something like that. Go with whatever.
Okay, sure. So my book, The Last Fallen Star, about Korean American witches in Los Angeles and one adopted girl's search for belonging, comes out on May the 4th in the US. It actually may be a little later for the rest of the world, but I'm not quite sure of the dates. But in any case, debuts first in the US on the 4th of May. And in terms of where they can find the book, basically anywhere books are sold. Obviously the big places like Amazon and Book Depository and where have you. But if you want to support your local bookseller, then feel free to go and ask them to stock the book, and they will be able to do that. And gosh, a parting thought. It's Winnie the Pooh. And he says, "How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard." I'll read it again. "How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard." And it really has nothing to do with our conversation today, except for the teary conversation that we had. But I just love that quote. And I just think it, I actually don't know. I think it's because I recently watched a movie where they had to say a very sad goodbye to someone who's passing away, and the whole idea of goodbye being so painful, and why do humans have to go through this? And I thought of that quote because if you turn it around, it's that saying goodbye is painful because you love them, because of love, and love is powerful.
Definitely.
So random parting thought.
No, that was an amazing parting thought. I think I wouldn't have come up with that. I would just be like, thank you for having.
But thank you also for having me.
I think that's the best send off, the best quote, the best way to end it. And yeah, thank you for joining me. It has honestly been an absolute pleasure being able to speak with you.
Thanks, Fran.
And I've noticed the entire time you've got on your wall the cover of The Last Fallen Star.
Yeah.
So obviously, guys, you can see it. So as Gracie said, go pre-order, go buy, go shout it to the world that everyone that you know should also go read and buy The Last Fallen Star by Graci Kim. And yeah, it's amazing, and I really, really hope that more people buy the book and love your book as well, as much as so many people seem to have already.
Thanks, Fran. It's been so nice to talk to you.
You as well. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will speak to you guys next time. Bye.